Combat. At first glance, it might seem that combat here is pretty simple, but underneath that simplicity is a very deep and dynamic system. Here, we'll take a look at the three types of combat in Asheron's Call. These are melee, ranged, and mage. In melee combat, the basic premise is that you have a power bar at the bottom of the screen. How long you charge this will determine how much damage a successful hit will do. Strategically speaking, it's usually best to use quick attacks against monsters who evade you often, and strong attacks against those who don't. Another strategy is to use full power attacks, then switch to low power when you see that your opponent is near death. Keep in mind that some weapons, such as dagger and unarmed, favor quick attacks in general. While in combat, you also get to choose how high or how low you will strike your opponent. It may not be obvious at first, but this actually affects your defensive standpoint. Opponents will typically only attack high, low, or medium. If you match their attack height, both you and your opponent will receive bonuses to your melee defense skills. In contrast, if your attack heights are opposite, you will receive penalties in them. If you really pay attention to which monsters use which attack heights, you can effectively choose how well you defend and attack to a certain degree. This is useful for opponents that hit really hard but have a low accuracy rate. You can also receive bonuses to your attack skill if your opponent is not actively engaged in combat with you. This is relevant for when you're in groups. And I should also mention that the thing that differentiates a melee from an archer or a mage is the fact that they can carry a weapon while using a shield. In Asheron's Call, that shield will absorb the majority of damage that your character receives, which makes this the easiest class to do dungeon crawling in. While fighting your opponent, you might want to also keep an eye on your stamina as well as your health. With no stamina, your character's run and melee defense skills will effectively be 0. This means that even a large group of low-level monsters can take you down if they drain your stamina far enough. People who choose a ranged weapon in AC are more offensively geared than those who pick melee. Not only can you do more damage, but you can do it from a distance, and you always want to take advantage of that fact. Because if you don't, you'll get the crap kicked out of you. Stamina is even more important to a person who uses ranged weapons, because without stamina there's no accuracy. That bar at the bottom changes from power to accuracy when you switch to a ranged weapon. So if your stamina should drop to 0 while you're using that bow, you won't be able to hit a hulking giant that's standing right in front of you at point blank range. It's that important. Strategically speaking, the only time that you would want to use less than full accuracy is for opponents who have a low missile defense, or for monsters who are low enough level to where you can dispatch them without using your full efforts. It is a pretty nice thing that archers don't have to sacrifice speed in order to get power, rather they sacrifice accuracy. And just as a side note here, most ranged weapons users take up fletching along with their weapon skill due to the fact that unprepared arrows and missiles are much lighter than fully assembled ones. This allows an archer to stay out on the field much longer than they would be able to otherwise. And finally, you have your mages, but before I go into mage combat, I might as well go over magic in general so everything makes more sense. In order to cast spells, you must carry certain components, these being scarabs and tapers, and you sacrifice a backpack slot to allow you to use the magic school that you are trained in. Since the game's inception, the component system has been updated so that you can simply use prismatic tapers and scarabs rather than the crazy amounts of mage items that you used to have to carry. While the old system still exists, it goes largely unused now. Magic in Asheron's Call is divided into 4 schools, each one having their own unique purposes. For the first 3 schools I talk about, every positive spell has a corresponding negative one, so think about the offensive as well as the defensive properties that could be applied knowing this. Item enchantment allows you to modify the properties of armor, weapons, and clothing, in addition to the ability to cast teleportation spells and also summon portals for other people. For the reason of transportation alone, most characters, regardless of what skills they choose, will undoubtedly train this magic school. And you might be interested to know that Item enchantment can also be used to make a locked chest or door easier to pick for a locksmith. Creature enchantment grants you access to spells that will increase or decrease your primary attributes and skills. Offensively, this is commonly used for more difficult opponents who can normally evade or resist your attacks. Life magic deals almost strictly in defensive spells. You can cast protection spells for natural armor and the 7 damage types, which I'll explain later, as well as the ability to freely transfer any of your secondary attributes to the other. As you might expect, you may also restore your allies' health, stamina, and mana as well. From an offensive standpoint, you may cast vulnerability spells, attribute drains, and even sacrifice your own secondary attributes to cast a bolt that does a special type of damage for which there are no protection spells for. A very skilled life mage can use this to their advantage as their primary means of attacking, but most mages go with war magic. This is what defines most mages in the game. Not surprisingly, mages are the true damage dealers here. They have instant access to nearly every damage type, and simply need to buy or obtain the corresponding scroll and they're all set. In addition to your standard bolt spells, you can gain access to special versions of these spells which serve very specific functions. Streak spells travel much faster than their bolt counterparts, which is best for moving targets. They do less damage for their mana cost, but can be cast quickly. Arcs allow you to fire over obstacles to hit your target. Blast and volley spells will hit multiple targets at once. In addition, there are other spells that must be obtained through quests or some other means. Among these are ring spells, which damage everything around you, and wall spells, which are excellent for larger opponents. Magic users of all types will have access to nearly every spell right from the start, which are simply purchased from designated areas. All 4 schools have 8 levels of spells, with level 1 being the weakest and easiest to cast, and level 8 being the strongest and most difficult. Most magic users will want to take up a skill called mana conversion in order to be able to continuously cast spells. Only those who are very skilled in managing life magic should try playing a mage without this skill. Trade skills and the treasure system. In Asheron's Call there are 4 trade skills. Training alchemy will allow you to create various potions, some which restore your secondary attributes, and others removing harmful enchantments from you. Other applications include enhancing arrows, replicating life magic into physical usable items, and also can be used to create weapons which can severely weaken your opponent's defenses, much like a life magic vulnerability spell. Cooking is more for those who wish to create recovery items in bulk and cheaply. You may also at some point create beers which will significantly raise your primary attributes for a short time. Cooking is also used as the final process for applying armor dyes. The best features of this skill come at a price though, as the strongest recipes often require you to actively seek out certain monsters and landscape plants to use in your creations. Fletching is pretty self-explanatory, and as I said earlier, you can carry bundled arrows, which are much lighter than their completed counterparts. Essentially, you assemble arrows as needed.